Hey, Aidan, my man, it's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Beautiful. And thank you so very much for being here, you see. I truly appreciate it. And you see, Aidan, oftentimes I love to thank my guests for two things. All right? And I do this so often to the point where it has become an anthem for me. So firstly, I want to say thank you so very much, Aidan, for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now, right here, because you did invest that in yourself. And oftentimes, Aidan, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Aidan, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Aidan, just recently, I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, which I did, and it wowed me. Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. And not just mangoes now either, but ripe mangoes. It was such a wonderful moment that day. I was so excited. There was my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Aiden that you are today, that alone has made it really impossible for me to say no to you. And getting to read about the beautiful things that you're doing, how you're offering your solutions, the impact your work is having. It's amazing. So I want to say thank you so very much for doing that to yourself. And secondly, thank you so very much for being here. Truly appreciate you, my man. Thank you. Hmm,
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate it.
beautiful. So let's get started. You see, I'm quite excited to have you on the show today, Aidan, for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Aidan, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge now, but the application of it. And you see, Aidan, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Aidan on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, Aidan, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, Aidan, my man, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, Aidan, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. Because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Aidan got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Aidan, my man, over to you.
Sure. So, I mean, essentially, I've got into the marketing game back in like 2019 after working with the MIT Enterprise Firm Cambridge. Typically, like around like 2017, I decided I want to go down the marketing route. I started a marketing agency. It was a social media marketing agency at the time. It later transitioned to like more so of like a public relations firm, and that happened around like the COVID-19 era. And we made that transition for a number of reasons. One, we would just notice there's a high level of value when it comes to getting featured in different news publications, TV interviews, things like that, especially during that time where there was a lack of trust. And then that company took off. We were able to, this may sound a little bit weird, but actually was quite lucrative, more so during the COVID era than prior to like the actual era. So that was very good. And then after that, then what we've done is we've grown the company in terms of like, gotten more resources, more connections ever since then, in terms of like more journalists, um, and more things which we can do for our clients. So just help them be seen as like industry leading authorities. And now we also run like a dialer software as well, which was initially supposed to just be sort of like an internal tool, but now has been more of like an external tool which clients are also using.
That's a great one you're doing. And I'm glad because it's amazing the impact that stuff is causing, and that's a great one. So I'm going to begin first with this part I'm curious about. Then let's talk about smart parallel dialing. All right. How is it changing outbound sales? Do you get the question?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say in terms of change, there's been a lot. The biggest is that you can save a lot of time, and that's one of the most frustrating people. I see it all over Reddit and other platforms. People complaining that they're just sitting there calling people, nobody's answering, etc. So smart parallel dialing, what it allows you to do is to maximize the number of people picking up the phone and minimize the number of people hanging up on the other side. Because what parallel dialing is, people who don't know what that is, essentially it's calling multiple numbers at the exact same time. And if you can maximize the number of people who are picking up the phone, essentially reducing the idle time while you're just sitting there waiting. So that's essentially the advantage of that.
Got that. Thank you for explaining that. Okay, what about cold calling? What do founders often get wrong about cold calling?
There's a lot of aspects. For one, the biggest myth, and I see this all the time, is that cold calling is dead. It simply, quote unquote, doesn't work. But I would say that to anyone who thinks that, look at the largest enterprise in the world, look to see what they're doing in terms of marketing. You'll notice that pretty much every single one of them is doing cold calling. So it's like, if it is truly dead, why are all the largest companies still doing it? Why do they have like cold calling teams often in the hundreds, if not thousands? They wouldn't do that. That would be so much wasted money, and it would be ridiculous. So the reality is that traditional methods of cold calling are maybe harder to do. For example, I'll give you an example: calling office numbers, much more difficult. That's just like a fact. But there's been changes. Okay, now you call cell phone numbers. Those have a high pickup rate. So that's a really big misconception that people think it just doesn't work as a method. And it's oftentimes because they don't call cell phone numbers, and it's because they use technology which is ineffective.
I got that. So let's get personal a bit, all right? I was growing up like, and what exactly inspired you to venture into this aspect of, you know, business and all?
What inspired me in terms of like the dialer software is just more so like we wanted to have like a good solution to be able to generate more leads. We just spent a lot of time really just researching different aspects to figure out what would work best, and eventually I came across this like, well, what if we didn't have to waste so much time over the phone? What there's a way? Parallel dialing kind of came to what I figured out that, and then the other aspects. There's a lot of different aspects like not burning out the numbers. There's a lot of data out there and a lot of misinformation as well, which I had to like push through to be able to figure out, what's the actual objective truth, and then from there, then there's the actual aspect of getting developers to build out the actual solution, and then making improvements upon that based on customer feedback.
And that's a great one. So how do you turn, data into, like, how do you help data convert? How do you turn data into DAOs that convert? You get that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the way you can ensure that like a lead converts, like it depends on what you could consider a conversion, I suppose. There's multiple factors. Some people just focus on the number of booked calls. There's a number of different what I would refer to as key performance indicators which you got to look at. Firstly, you want to see like, okay, if we call 300 people or whatever, and I would actually say calling number of people is actually not necessarily the best metric. The best metric which I see is the number of pickups which you get. So how many pickups are you getting on an hourly basis? And of those pickups, what percentage of those people book a call? And what percentage of those people actually show up to the call? And what percentage of the people who show up actually sign up? And then you can kind of track and be like, okay, so if I do 1,000 people actually pick up the phone, a certain percentage of those people will show up to calls, and a certain percentage of those people will sign up. So then it's a little bit less discouraging to do cold calling, because then okay, if you know your data, you're like, okay, I just got to put in the numbers, and on average, I'm going to get a deal after this amount of calls.
I got that. Well, hypothetically, let's say someone asks, hey, Hayden, how can I build a business when no one believes in me? What would you respond?
I mean, I would say that's perfectly normal. And I would say a lot of businesses like Amazon and some of the largest companies in the world had a lot of skepticism, especially in the early age. But it didn't stop them, right? So I mean, it's that just comes with the territory. Whenever you're doing something new, it doesn't even need to be a business. People will have skepticism and like doubt, self-doubt, etc. And that's just normal. I mean, whenever you're doing something uncomfortable, something new, I mean, that's just the reality of things. And that could be anything. So you just have to take the plunge anyway. It might be scary, but like just do it because I mean that's just the reality of things whenever you do anything new.
Just do it. I got that. So let us talk about visibility. See, I love how you're answering those questions because these are very, very important topics for many entrepreneurs out there. So let's look at the visibility aspect of it. All right. So can, all right, how can someone become visible in their industry from the scratch?
To be seen as credible, could you clarify that?
Yeah, I said, how can someone become visible in their industry from the scratch? Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of visibility, there's several aspects. So for one, there's credibility, being seen as like a trusted source. And there's a couple of ways you can go about doing that. One is through like news outlets, TV interviews, things like that. Another one's through testimonials and reviews, like I'm sure you see with like restaurants, they get a ton of Google reviews. Or in the case of like people who are trying to sell books, they get a ton of Amazon reviews and they're seen as more credible. They're just trying to sell products on Amazon. They're seen as more credible when they get reviews. The more third-party credibility you can get, the stronger you have in terms of like actual trust. In terms of like straight getting in front of people, like, hey, I want to get to as many people as possible. It depends on the actual niche. But there's several ways to go about doing it. Cold calling is one of them. Cold email, Facebook messages, and stuff like that. Facebook ads, Google ads, TikTok ads. There's so many different ways to be able to get in front of people. And then there's even more traditional methods, such as people going straight to like events and stuff. So there's so many different ways you can get in front of them. And it really depends on the industry. What is the exact best way to get in front of your customers? Because it depends on the industry. I would say when something is more so an industry where it's like normal to like call customers, then oftentimes the phone is more normal. It would be very, very weird, for example, for a plastic surgeon to be cold calling potential clients. Like that would never happen because it's just not something that you do in like that blue collar type of industry, like the white collar industry. It's just not something you do. So it depends on your industry, and one of the best ways to go about doing it is just going to Google and figuring out like, hey, like what are the most common ways people generate leads in my industry, and then based on that, reverse engineering it. And there's a lot of information out there. You can figure out like competitors, what they're doing, just go into their websites, and you want to figure out the top players in your industry in your specific niche. And if you figure that out, then you can essentially copy what they're doing, but do it better. That's a strategy.
I think I got that. Okay, so we have some few questions left. So what does a strong cold call script sound like in 2025?
I would say a cold call script, I mean, that's kind of like one of those evolving questions, I would say, because it's always changing what works. It's a good cold call script is something which catches them off guard in terms of it's not something they've already heard. So one of the recent trends which I'm seeing is the trend of people saying, this is a cold call, would you like to hang up or something? And I've seen a lot of gurus really just pushing that particular starter for like a cold call. I would say it's going to become less and less effective the more people use it. You don't want to come across as robotic. I would say beyond just scripts, you don't want to sound robotic. It needs to sound human based. That you're actually reaching them off at. And if you are using a script, you absolutely must memorize the script. That's another key thing. I see people who have like a Google Doc pulled up as they're doing a cold call and they're literally reading it off. And people are not stupid. Even if they can't physically see you reading the script, they know you're reading a script. So it's one of those things that you got to have it completely memorized to the point that it just comes off the tongue very easily. And one thing which I've learned is oftentimes more about how you say it versus what you say. So if you come across as extremely confident, people will inherently just believe in you. If you come across as even saying the completely right things, if you come across as not confident, people will be like, I don't know, like, let me think about it and stuff like that. And they're going to shoot all this stuff back at you because they just don't trust you. If you don't trust yourself, then why should they trust you? And that's exactly how people think.
That's so true. I got that. I got that. So, how do we therefore train new reps to succeed in cold calling?
I would say with succeeding with cold calling, a large part of it is repetition. So just taking like the hits in terms of like there's a lot of rejection initially speaking. That's the reality of any type of sales. But I would say analyzing it. It all comes back to data. So figuring out like, okay, we tried this, didn't really work. Tried this, didn't really work. I would say repetition, and then also targeting mobile numbers is very key to success in actual cold calls. So like reaching out to mobile numbers and doing volume. That's one of the most important and most underutilized thing, which I've seen with like cold callers, is they just simply don't do enough volume. You could have the perfect script, you could have perfect tonality, perfect everything, but you're only reaching out to 10 people a day. Versus the guy who might not have all those things down, he's reaching out to 50, 100 people a day. Most likely he's actually going to outperform you. And that's sometimes what I see is I see people who are quote unquote less intelligent or less smart or whatever, less refined or quote unquote, but they're beating the other guy who is like all these things because they're simply just doing more volume. And sales in the end of the day is still a volume game. So the more volume you can do, the better you're going to do.
Beautiful. I got that. So to bring this to an end, Aidan, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those guys who would like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've discussed, or even ask questions, how can that be possible?
Yeah, so I mean, they can definitely check out the Zoto Dialer website. If anyone who's watching the podcast, like, we're willing to give like a 20% discount on the first month for the actual subscription of the dialer. So if they just mention like, hey, like I watched it on like the Witnesses podcast, they can mention that. Or if they want to reach out to me directly, you can always reach out to me over LinkedIn, over Instagram, at the Aidan Sowa on Instagram and Aidan Sowa on LinkedIn.
Okay, any final thoughts?
No, I mean I think we've covered a lot.
That's so true. So that's going to be the end of the show, my man. Thank you for coming. And thank you for sharing this beautiful stuff with us. It means a whole lot. Thank you.
Definitely.